On today's podcast, we sit down with legendary music executive Daniel Glass, founder and CEO of Glassnote Records. Daniel's incredible journey spans from spinning records as a college DJ and launching iconic artists like Pat Benatar, Huey Lewis and the News, and Sinead O'Connor, to building one of the most respected independent labels in the world, home to Phoenix, Mumford Sons, Childish Gambino, and Chvrches. We dive deep into the role of faith and family in his life, unpack the secrets of artist development, and explore what it really takes to break a career in today's music landscape. Daniel also reveals the biggest challenges facing independent labels, why it's always about the song, and offers invaluable wisdom for artists and aspiring industry professionals. This is one conversation you can't afford to miss. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch Esra and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we sit down with one of the industry's true visionaries, the founder and CEO of Glassnote Records, Daniel Glass. If you're looking for an inspirational, real talk, and a masterclass in artist development, leadership, and surviving the long haul in the music business, this episode is for you. Daniel shares powerful insights on building a career that endures, the critical role that faith, charity, and family play in his work, and what it really takes to break down artists in today's fast-paced industry. You'll discover why he believes in the importance of mentoring, why service is at the heart of true leadership, and how patience, passion, and honesty drive success, whether you're an artist, manager, or executive. We talk about Glassnote's roster, from Mumford Sons and Phoenix to Childish Gambino and Chvrches, to uncover what makes an artist truly stand out. Plus, Daniel reveals practical lessons you can use right now to build your own career in music. Stick around. This conversation is packed with invaluable advice, amazing stories from Daniel's incredible journey, and the kind of wisdom that will motivate you to take your next big step. Trust us, you don't want to miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey Insiders, are you an aspiring musician, artist, band, or future music business pro ready to level up your career? MUBUTV is here with personalized coaching designed just for you.
Imagine having expert guidance every step of the way, from refining your songs and telling your artist's story to finding your audience and boosting your social media presence.
Whether you're just starting out or ready to grow your brand, we cover it all. Live shows, marketing strategies, branding, and more. Every session is tailored to your unique goals.
We have flexible packages that fit any budget. Choose single sessions from 30 to 90 minutes or save with discounted bundles. Your music career deserves this investment.
Get clarity, confidence, and real results, starting with a free 15-minute discovery call. Visit us now at book.mubutv.com. Don't wait to unlock your full potential. Every artist's journey is unique, but there are three crucial pieces everyone needs to succeed: knowing how to reach A&R executives, finding the right artist manager, and pitching music for film and TV placements.
At MUBUTV, we've packaged these insights into 3 free guides designed to give you a clear path forward.
Whether you're wondering how to contact A&R without burning bridges, what it really takes to attract an artist manager who believes in you, or how to land those lucrative sync placements, we've got you covered.
Each guide is packed with real-world advice, do's and don'ts, and strategies that work.
Visit the podcast description or YouTube video description right now to download all 3 guides for free. Start building your career with the knowledge that industry insiders wish they had when they started.
Hi, this is music producer Bob Ezrin, and you're listening to the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured guest is one of the industry's true visionaries, the founder and CEO of Glassnote Records, the one and only Daniel Glass. As you know, Eric, this is somebody that we have been wanting to have on the show for a very long time.
Yep.
And I'm so glad that we were able to get him. Daniel is truly a one of a kind.
Yeah.
He is somebody who as we learned, has been in this business a very, very long time. And after this conversation with him, it's completely understandable how he has lasted over 40 something years in this business.
Just massive success.
Massive success on so many levels at so many eras, whether it was
both
at the
personally, professionally,
exactly,
which we'll get into in the conversation.
Very much so. And one of the things that struck me about what we just talked about is the fact that he begins his day every day with a prayer. He has certain spiritual practices that help him, reflect and slow down and focus, even in the relentless pace of, the industry of today, which is just go, 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 go.
Right.
And I think that really helps center him. And I think everybody, I feel this as I get older, that element of having a spiritual practice is so important.
Definitely.
And when I heard him speak about that, it made me understand how he has been able to last as long as he has without burning out,
right?
Without, going crazy or so many of the things that we hear.
It was very relatable to me on those levels, Rich, because I do practice meditation and not necessarily following a certain religious path. I'm more of a spiritual person, but I could definitely connect with his energy and what he has done in his own life that has made him so successful. One of the areas that I loved about this conversation, which are many, but the power of mentoring and, how he equates the value of mentoring new employees or artists with breaking new careers that are both investments in the future. And I think this is such an important thing that we miss a lot of times, that there's not that artist development. Now, today, you've got to be, at a 40, we talk about, you and I on the show a lot, you got to be at a 40 or 50% before anybody's going to even open the door to see what's going on with what you're doing. And I love the fact that, and he mentioned it in the show, that A&R has really taken a backseat to what it once was, which was about developing artists. And he was a real big opponent of how things have gone in that way. So I really love the idea that, he still values the idea of mentoring and developing, because I think that's why he's had such incredible success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, Eric, on that note, one of the things that he said along the lines of what you were saying is that when he went wrong in his career, it was precisely because he didn't follow that value. He didn't follow his instincts or his gut that was telling him this isn't, quite there yet.
Right.
And that was a very, very interesting point in terms of one's own character as it applies to you professionally.
And with that, insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with the legendary Daniel Glass.
Daniel, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Great to have you. You and I have known each other for quite a number of years. And, your story is as much about, I guess, a long-term endurance as much as it is about music. And as we were researching, to do this interview, themes of faith, legacy, and what it means to build something that lasts continually come up in your story. And that is where we want to start, not with your career, but with the deeper foundations that seem to guide how you live and work. So I want to start there on a deep dive. You have said you still speak to your parents, who both passed away in the last 5 or 6 years, and that you continue to feel their presence. Our question is, how has loss shaped the way you lead and find meaning in your work today?
Wow, it's a wonderful question, and you got me off guard because it's a beautiful spiritual question. And as I think about it, I think about the moments we're at in Jewish history. And this is perhaps the most volatile time in Jewish life in many, many years. And I'll explain why I'm coming around to that. When I grew up in this house in Brooklyn with my parents, we really had 3 basic tenets, three pillars and mantras, which were, and in no order: education, charity, and family. And I say in no order, those 3 things. And the charitable part of that triangle has stayed with me because my parents, we didn't grow up wealthy. We grew up very middle class and had an amazing upbringing in childhood to nourish us. Now that I have 2 granddaughters, I'm seeing their lens and the patience I have with them, but the gifts my parents gave us to give back, and the charity work and the volunteerism has always been part of my life in the music industry, giving back and being there for the unpopular causes, being there for the underdog, being there for the vulnerable. So whether it was early advocacy of safe sex and fighting for those who are HIV positive and who had AIDS, fighting for sexuality issues and gender issues, fighting for the people who are fighting against the disease of alcoholism and drugs, fighting for against anti-Semitism, hatred, and racism. These are areas which I'm proud of our business, besides health issues of fighting cancer, leukemia, AIDS, various things that are wonderful TJ Martell, City of Hope type of organizations do. So I think the charitable part of my parents, who worked so hard fighting for war veterans and fighting for Holocaust survivors and fighting for neighborhoods, fighting against racism, delivering packages to less fortunate people during the holiday season, not only Jewish people, but everybody in the neighborhoods, walking up 4 or 5 flights of steps with my father to deliver food packages to people who were really, really needy, proud people. I mean, the first thing I did at the UJA was restitution of funds for Holocaust survivors. And that came because of my parents. So it was really, and I think, loss, informs, my work. If I transfer that to the record company, many people have said to me over the years, in my whole career, why didn't you drop that artist? And, my CFO or head of business affairs has said, they don't make sense. And I still believe in those artists that their career will blossom. So I think patience, persistence, and passion are much better than a financial sheet on the music industry. In the last week, I have spoken to the same teammates, the same employees that I worked with 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, and 2 years ago, and that joy. So the long answer to your question is the values instilled in me by my parents are ones that ring in my head all day, about family, about charity, and about education, which is why I try and bring that into the office as much as possible, educating people. Please read the newspaper, the entire thing, cover to cover. And I say it all the time to people, why didn't you read the sports section or the arts and leisure section or the business section or the fall preview section? I think it makes you a more interesting person. Education is really key, going outside of the comfort zone. So how I relate that, going outside the comfort zone with education, is I gave a spiel at Apple Music and at Amazon this week, music, about Silvana Estrada. And I said, you keep telling me how brilliant she is. You keep telling us how she is the most genius new artist out there from Mexico, but you need to go and burst the membrane in your playlist world and put her on a playlist that's uncomfortable for you. I say this to them, and I say this to our team. That's the only way we're going to break her through and keeping her out of this little indie folk ghetto, because she belongs in the mass appeal world. And that's my joy of taking things from left to right, or left to middle, I should say, in my career. So that comes from my parents. My mother's words to me for 30 years is get more involved and immersed in the Latin music world. So Mom, I have working with Silvana Estrada now fulfills that, and giving back, just giving back all the time is something I believe in. I would equal mentoring a new employee, a new teammate, as equal as breaking a career, in my estimation, in my gratitude circle. It makes me feel great when there's a new person that is being, if I can help train, mentor them, gives me amazing joy when I watch them blossom and grow and stay in touch with them.
Daniel, this is Eric. It's a real honor having you on the show. I wanted to kind of stick with that deeper foundations theme that we were talking about at the top of the show. And, I wanted to ask you, you begin your day with prayer before you touch even your phone. And I'm curious, what has that discipline taught you about slowing down in an industry that just never stops?
It's, the reflection of what's important in a spiritual way. I think sets the tone of my day. The two things that I'm known for during it would be the prayer. And number two is my long run every morning, where I can sort of organize, set the agendas, the tones, the priorities. And not having a device really puts it in perspective. When you wake up, it's a fresh morning every day. And my prayer always goes to my family first. Always, 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 no matter what is going on, I think about how could I help one of my children or grandchildren or my wife or my mother-in-law. What didn't I do? So that's perhaps a tiny bit of guilt mixed in with aspirational dreams and goals. Then the music seeps in, and then it's the beauty of the music driving me and what we can do. But I think it just sets the agenda, sets the tone of the day.
Sticking on that, let me ask one step further with that. How does faith or gratitude show up in your daily decision making as an executive and as a person?
You could never lose, or there's these. I'm trying to. Lord Sachs, Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, talked about ambition and hope, and I never really understood the difference of which is the more proactive or the active thing. And I've learned that hope is much more important, much more active as a physical, visceral thing. Ambition is kind of a term, it's kind of a concept. So when I say don't lose faith or don't lose hope, we have to believe that when you identify greatness in an artist or a song, it will find the audience and rise to the top and get fans. So if you believe in somebody, you have to stay with it and give them the confidence and belief. I think the last 5 years have been extremely disappointing for me in that world, because I am seeing the first time in my long career the letdown of ambition, hope, hustle from artists, and subsequently from managers who are not as good as what we used to have in the business. And that could be another podcast of, were they trained, were they mentored, what are they doing in that seat? So I've been a little disappointed, or a lot disappointed, I would say, in that part of it. But I think on the faith part of it, when you hear something that moves you, you have to have faith and you have to believe in it. And I think that comes from, where I'm from. And it is sort of a religion, because when it clicks, when the cliche happens, hearing it on the radio the first time, just having the audience sing along with it. I think if I've made any mistakes in the last 5 years, it's been signing artists that are not the mandate of why we started the company, which was to sign the best live artists. If something moved us live, we thought we could be in business and do what's right. And eventually the music and the records become commercial, or they become more easier to expose. But I think that signing records from a quantitative standpoint, or a research-oriented point, or a Zoom, things like that, have led us astray in the music industry. And we've signed on to what I call wet paper bags, and not going to have a catalog which will be as robust and meaningful in 10, 20, and 30 years, which is why I think the 70 to 90-year-old artists are making their deals and selling their catalogs, because they know that the value of it is so much higher than anybody in their 18 to 40 group. So it's faith is very important when you believe in somebody. Obviously, I mentioned Silvana Estrada is somebody that I truly believe in, because I've seen her live. I've watched her make people cry, and I've seen her be outspoken about women's rights and horrible violence, which is in her neighborhoods and places that she's lived in Mexico. I think that that's important to have faith. And it's when you see something, I go back to I think you may have heard me talk about this before, but I had the fortune to work at Chrysalis for almost 7 years in the great days of the 80s. And for my work on Spandau Ballet, which was both studio work and the world of promotion and marketing, I was rewarded. The two owners, Chris Wright and Terry Ellis, said, "We want to take you for a drink." And they took me to Robata, which is a sake Japanese place on the Upper East Side near the office. This is 1984, probably. We had just gone to number 2 on the Billboard charts with True, and we had a gold record. and they want to take me out. So, we did the toast. I had never tasted sake before that night. I did not eat the fish, but because I didn't even know what it was. But when I asked them, how do you know? Like, how do you know? Because, you guys have signed from Robin Trower to Jethro Tull to 10 years after to Pat Benatar, Billy Idol. Billy I hadn't broken yet, I'm sorry. But I could keep going, Huey Lewis in the News. And I asked them, like, how do you know? And the long answer was, when you walk in the room and start feeling it, if you don't feel Madison Square Garden, walk out. And that stayed with me my entire career. And that's my live basis. Obviously, it could be the O2, it could be Lollapalooza, Coachella, any of the great festivals, or Newport. But I still hold that, and I get very introspective when I'm on the third, fourth song, and I'm feeling the crowd and seeing the crowd, or hearing people sing. And then the faith begins. Can we do this journey together? And every gold and platinum record I've been involved with, been lucky to be involved with, has had that moment where eventually we get there. It may take a year, it may take 10 years, but we get to the big stage. So that's how I still live. And I will tell you, my flops are because I didn't follow the guidelines. I went outside the guidelines for whatever reason. Pandemic, whatever reason. I got hyped, whatever it is. And I went for the shiny thing rather than the long thing. Mixed in with bad management. Some really, really bad management of our era. That's the faith aspect of seeing it, believing it, and staying with it. And it will happen.
Indeed. Daniel, I want to switch gears and I want to go back to the beginning of your journey, from spinning records as a college DJ to your time as the first DJ at Regine's nightclub in New York. Give us a sense of the musical and cultural atmosphere of that era.
Well, the beauty was, as a DJ, we were absorbing and hearing music from all over the world, particularly Italy and Germany were vibrant. A little bit of France, but really Italy and Germany had dance music, which was influencing us. And because of straddling, now I'm in college, I'm a DJ, and I'm also working for a publisher who's involved in dance music. So I had a lot of things going on at 19 years old. So I got to meet these DJs because I was bringing them these test pressings, these white label test pressings, and I would ask them, what influences you? And I remember Bobby DJ Guttadaro, who's passed away too young, but was spinning at a club called Infinity. And I went to Bobby's house to bring him a record, and I said, what do you listen to, Bobby? And he was listening to Sarah Vaughan. Sarah Vaughan was his North Star. And that began my education, like, wow. And I didn't know a lot about the great saxophonists and Coltrane. And I learned the great DJs and producers were listening to other music, and that also, thanks to my parents, exposing us to Broadway at a very young age. We'd go into the quote unquote city to see West Side Story and My Fair Lady and Fiddler on the Roof and the Oklahoma and all those great plays, those musicals, which definitely seeped into my bloodstream and my psyche. But I learned so much from those DJs about preparation, about perfection, about editing. And then the other part of it was, in that era, was educating your dance floor, which to me, I espoused that when I started doing marketing and promotion, pushing people at retail, radio, DSPs to go to the uncomfortable places and clear the dance floor. That was my metaphor, because I learned if you really believed in a record as a DJ, play it 3 times. Frankie Crocker, the great DJ at WBLS, if he believed in a record, he'd play it 4 times on his Friday show. In that, not in a row, but that's how much he believed, whether it was a Patti LaBelle record or a Luther Vandross record, Earth, Wind and Fire, could have been a big dance record. And that's what I did as a DJ. And that's what, when I went to the big 12 West or the Galaxy or Gallery or, Funhouse, the great DJs in that era were doing that. So I think it's the same thing with rotation of a record. I was one of those guys who said, you can't play this once at night in lunar rotation. You got to keep playing it. You got to expose it. I told a story the other day when I was pushing for Sylvana Estrada or pushing for Mumford Sons, where I went to lunch with Tuma Basa. Tuma is now at YouTube and one of the greatest programmers I've ever met. He was at Spotify at the time. He's the guy that came up and was leading Rap Caviar. And I sat with him at lunch and I said to him, Tuma, you got to play Redbone by Childish Gambino. He said, I can't. I said, why can't you play it? Because we're a hip hop station. I said, it is hip hop. It's hip hop in feel, in vibe. It may not have the rap quality to it. And I said to him, do me a favor. Give me Innocence Until Proven Guilty. Take it off if you get rejections. Anyway, long story short, I always said to him, what's the worst thing that could happen? He made a joke, I believe, and said, I can get fired. I said, that's not so bad. So anyway, he played it. He added it immediately, and it became the number one record there. And it's the same thing, by the way. I did the same thing with Bob Pittman and Tom Pullman when iHeart was contemplating, what do we do with this record? And they put it on all their radio stations. So it's that goes back to my DJ days of learning how to educate your audience with good things and quality when you believe in something, or you've seen it react for someone else. That's why going to other clubs. So the DJ culture in those days, we were always, I don't know what the word is, overly stimulated. Maybe that's the term. At 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, when I finished my shift at Regine's, I needed to go out. I couldn't go home. So we went to other clubs to see other after hours DJs. And then you went to the booth. What did you just play? What was that? And the whole thing in those days is who had the best test pressings, who had the best reel-to-reel tape in their DJ booth, and they were getting exclusives from people testing them out. But the DJs that rose to the top were not the ones that played the top 10. It was the ones that mixed it in. Experimental records, things that pushed the boundaries. You played The Clash alongside black music. You had a keyboard, a live sax or a live keyboard mixed in with your music in the DJ booth. Those are the DJs that went to the top. So DJ culture really did it. And the other part of it was international. I was lucky enough to hear music from all over the world as a DJ. Regine's was not a New York club. It was an international club of jet set people. So people were constantly bringing music in. They wanted to hear the latest hit from Brazil, the latest hit from Italy. And that's what we played. So that definitely influences what Glassnote is about. How does a company, a little New York independent label, have an Irish, a Scottish, a Canadian, a band from a French band from Versailles, so many Australian artists, so many artists from Vienna. I think about our international roster. The one area we're probably light in is American artists. So that comes because of my palette, which was developed over years of being a DJ. So
let me ask you something, Daniel, on that, because that's such an interesting point. I want to go one step deeper with you. Did you know at that time that you're speaking to us at that music would become your life's work?
The day it all changed for me. So I'm a pre-med student at Brooklyn College, and my mother said, and I broke my leg. So I've told the story many times. And she said, you got to get a job. I can't continue to, I lived at home. I can't continue to pick you up, and I can't work. I was a short order cook soda jerk in a Brooklyn luncheonette, which is, I guess, people listening, that's like a diner. And I couldn't do that job because I have a cast on my leg. So I've got to find something to do for 8 weeks. I got a job at the college radio station. And by mistake, just because of a clerical error, they auditioned me to be a DJ. I didn't have the elocution. I didn't have the diction, which I learned, which I picked up. And I certainly knew about music. I knew a lot about R&B and jazz and disco and dance. I was learning about rock through my sister and through other means, and obviously the great FM radio stations. But the path, I didn't know. No, I did not know. But when I played a song called Wet Weekend by the Rockgazers on my radio show, and the writer called me on my show at Brooklyn College and said, I want to meet you. Can you come to, what we call the city to meet? I was like, wait a second. Like, I went to my boss, the program director, and then I went to meet her on Fifth Avenue and 69th Street, which was another world for a kid from Brooklyn. Like, I just couldn't believe it. that my show got to somebody and affected somebody who wrote a song. And then she said, I want to hire you. I said, to do what? She said, you're going to work and get my songs. Well, that was called song plugging in those days, which was two meanings. Song plugging meant get my song recorded and also plug it with radio DJs, which of course I didn't know how to do. I didn't know any of those people. So it definitely became intoxicating to go out at night and play records for crowds and then work with her, be at the radio station. And my parents were incredible. They just said, we just want you to be happy every time I told them. And they saw what it was like. And I was getting very little sleep because I'm going to college. I'm working at night as a DJ. I'm working for Gladys Shelley and Harry Finfer in their publishing. So I'm doing all this at 18 and 19 years old. But it wasn't that I looked down on it, because I really wanted to become a pediatrician. I really wanted to make my parents proud. But I was having so much fun. But I didn't know you could make a living doing that. I got paid well as a DJ. And then the first time I got cash, real cash, was when Charles Evans of the Evans brothers, was Bob Evans and Charles Evans. Their family was in the Garment Center, but they became major film producers. And the Sir Laurence Olivier film, what was it called? Is It Safe?
Marathon Man.
A Marathon Man. Yes, thank you. So Marathon Man is about to premiere. They hire me to be the DJ for the premiere and the party at Tavern on the Green. And I didn't even ask how much they paid me. They gave me so much money to do that party, cash. And I wasn't even a mobile DJ. And I did it. I used equipment from a friend. Then I started making cassettes for people, customers at Regine's, and the money was insane. So I found a way to hustle, and I said, wow, you can really make a living here. But I did not know that would become my life's work when I started spinning records and mixing records and editing records. I just loved it.
Daniel, I want to touch on something you talked about earlier. During your tenure with Chrysalis, you helped launch and build the careers of such artists, which you mentioned before: Pat Benatar, Huey Lewis and the News, Billy Idol, Spandau Ballet, Sinead O'Connor, and many others. What did this period, which was a very healthy period in the business at that time, teach you about developing and breaking artists?
Well, a couple of things. It had a British UK mentality. So, Americans don't really understand, the average American, how intrinsic and inbred, in a good way, the music lifestyle and music is in the DNA of British, United Kingdom citizens. And when you grow up, the rite of passage. To them, getting to Reading and Leeds is like the greatest thing in the world. There's less distractions. There's less diversions into video games and food and sports and getting tutors to get yourself into a good school. America is a little different than that. So I loved the obsession and focus on music from the UK sensibility. So I became really a British music executive living in New York because I loved the Chrysalis culture. Next thing I learned to Chrysalis is, and I thought every record company had a publishing company that was a sibling. So A&M had it with Almo and Rondor. Virgin had it with Virgin Music and the publishing. I thought that was the way it was. So we had this at Chrysalis with Chrysalis Music, and we made publishing deals and did a great job. So I assumed that's the way it was. Obviously, it was not that way, which I found out after the days of SBK, where publishing was definitely separate entities and not considered it. But I also learned about live. Everything we did at Chrysalis was about the live crowd, the audience. I remember the first time I learned about video directing and commissioning a video. The Bill Aucoin managing Billy Idol, and the people like Jeff Aldridge and Brendan Burke, who worked really as the A&R brain trust of Billy Idol. They were telling me, we got to shoot through the crowd. I said, what do you mean? We got to shoot like we're in the audience. Don't shoot above it. Don't shoot below it. Do it on their shoulders, like we're in the crowd moshing, or we're in the first, we're in the pit, or we're in the orchestra. So I learned a lot there about live and building into the arena. We didn't talk about stadiums and headlining festivals in those days. It wasn't around, that culture. But I think that's what I learned there. And A&R, how important it was. Exquisite A&R, exquisite taste, less is more. Our batting average was ridiculous. If we didn't have a gold record from something, we'd have a whole case study, post-mortem, like what went wrong. Or if we spent too much money on a project. We had gold records with people like Go West, but we spent too much money on that. And that wasn't really, what we should have been doing, although the records were great. So I learned about teamwork. I learned about traveling. And I learned about cultivating a diverse staff. When I look at pictures now of our old promotion team, to have, Black and Asian promotion people in a small company like ours, and our team, doing alternative rock, obviously I was pretty colorblind to what was going on, but like, what an amazing team we had at Chrysalis. So, but it was definitely a British sensibility, which really took over the company, and the artist was so key. But we loved going to shows. It really hurts me today when young people don't have the experience of going to the show. I was telling one of our bands the other day, like, I really hate the meet and greet before shows. What do you say to people? Have a good break a leg? The best part was always after the show, in the exhaustive, when in the sweaty, post party, rock and roll atmosphere. I miss those days of staying up till 2, 3 in the morning, and that's and then going to an after party. So it's it's much, much more conservative these days. It's a business more than it was a rock and roll lifestyle. But we had so much fun at Chrysalis, and I just thought the taste was great. I learned so much there.
Daniel, sticking with the Chrysalis thread, you created a college intern program over at Chrysalis that launched careers. What's the key to spotting potential, not just in artists, but in future industry leaders?
So my secret weapon in those days was the CBS Records college department. They hired the best people. It was run by all these, legendary guys, had it under their umbrella auspices. My wife happened to be a CBS college rep. And when I was dating her, she was the Boston rep. She reported into the CBS sales branch. They made her work so hard. I remember waiting for her. She had a Lena Lovitch, Elvis Costello show, or Psychedelic Furs, but she was so conscientious. But they were all that way. And, she might have been, in my opinion, she was great and the best. But so I started to poach and take them. As they were about to graduate, I would call respectfully the head of CBS College and say to them, can I please speak to Jerry Blair or Greg Thompson or Shanna Nartz, who became Shanna Fisher, or Chris Waltman, or these legends now that did that. And I got permission every time and hired them. They were great. They were professional. They knew how to do a report. Because they were merchant. They were putting up, they knew how to put up a poster. They knew how to do the post-show, pre-show. They were doing interview discs. So we just took that into the local marketplace. And then I started to, build an internship program at Chrysalis where I really empowered interns. Eddie Rosenblatt let me come to a Geffen Records meeting one day as a spectator, as a peer. And I noticed there was a center, huge table, and Geffen was a great company. And I noticed, I was very young, and I said to Eddie, who are these people? He said, some of them are interns. We don't really discriminate, and we want to hear their ideas. And ever since that meeting, I felt more secure of having an intern in your room because they actually know more than we know. They're closer to social media things and trends and music trends and things. Oh, you get a few bad apples that either divulge a secret or lie or steal. That happened to me and happens to everybody in our business over a long career. But for the most part, I spotted talent that way. And it was the Daniel Glasses I looked at raising their hand. I'll do that. I'll bring that over to the TV show. I'll do that. 7 days a week. I'm ready. And today I'm finding less and less of them. I think coming out of the pandemic, the two words I'm missing the most are hustle and community. So we need to do a better job of promoting and encouraging hustle and promoting community. But those days, it was great. So those interns are still with me and done great things, and became a college rep department. And I still, two of my, or three, I could say, that I speak to all the time, college reps, and who became exec. Lisa Warden, who runs all the alternative stations for iHeart.
We've had her on the show. Yeah. Amazing
Legend. She worked for us in LA for Jeff Lawfer in the LA office. And then you have Aaron Axelson was in San Francisco, legend. Guy looks like he's 26 years old. And John Cohen, who owns Fader with the late Rob Stone. He was a guy that came through our system and is doing great stuff. I'm just giving you a few examples of people that were those people. So I think that internship mentor thing needs to happen in our business. And I say shame on us as a business, what we've done in the management area, the A&R area. Horrible what we've done, not training people properly. And we're paying the price for it, which is why management firms are filling that void. That's who's taken over in a lot of ways, self-contained departments within management companies. They have more access to the gatekeepers. They're doing it better. And record companies are basically distributors with quote unquote services. I don't even know what the services word mean anymore, but I think shame on us as a business for not mentoring more. And there are exceptions, by the way, to that. I think there are some great ones, but in general, we've done a terrible job. And I always sit down with peers and we commiserate, and I say to them, encourage it. And it's happening. The agency world does a very nice job. I would say CAA, Wasserman, places like that, they are doing a really nice job nurturing, encouraging, involving, because they do teams. If you know how the good agencies work, they put a senior and a junior agent on a new artist. And that gives it freshness, but also gives it experience and relationships. So I think that does it really, really well. It's almost like a police patrol with the experienced pro, and next to them is the rookie. And I think it works. It works because you need both.
Yeah.
You need freshness, you need youth, vitality, but you also need experience and relationships. Because every day someone says to me, how do you know that person? How are you able to say that? That took time. It took going to many sporting events, concerts, funerals, weddings, who knows what it was, births. It's just the time you spend with people.
Yeah, and that level of commitment. I want to talk to you about the EMI situation. EMI, went through its consolidation in this era, and you stepped into your first major label as president of EMI Records North America. And, we're curious, what did that experience teach you about leadership? Not just in terms of managing a company, but in guiding people, navigating a lot of uncertainty, and I guess defining your own philosophy, as a leader.
I made a lot of mistakes, and I think it taught me a lot. It was a great learning experience of, I would say, reading my business card, looking at the CEO of EMI Records Group North America was a mistake, because all the perks and trappings that come with it, I read it, I sort of believed in it, and I said to myself, I was not happy about it. I must tell you, I was with the legendary Russ Bach. I was in Albany when I got the call. We were at Transworld, and my bosses said, come home, we got great news. We've just merged EMI, Chrysalis, and SBK. So wait a second. I already did Chrysalis. I already did SBK. Like what? Why are we doing this? Oh, it's going to be powerful. You're going to be the new czar, all this kind of stuff. And to merge three cultures. EMI was not an indie culture. It was not an entrepreneurial culture. It was a great record company, built in the UK. But Chrysalis certainly was going to become a shadow of itself, and SBK was going to become a diluted shadow of itself. When they were hot and as entities, they were great, and they had their own culture, their own vibe, their own way of swagger and doing business. So to merge those three, you had three heads of promotion, three heads of business affairs, three heads of publicity, and then it was, the almost religious choices of you're in, you're out, which no one, I think, had the right to do in that way. So that didn't work. And then, setting up a release schedule, which on paper, you couldn't fail. On paper, Queensryche 1 week, Robert Palmer the second week, Sinead the next week, Pat Benatar the next week, Billy Idol the next week, on and on and on and on. And, this can't miss. And everybody started to miss. Chili Peppers, we had all these records coming one after another. It was a release machine. So I learned about the pipe putting too many things out. And I learned that I was an independent person at heart. I was a person that liked to focus more. I liked the intimacy of a culture much more than working as a general commanding troops in different wars, because that's what it was. We had three, battlefronts everywhere with different artists and things. So I learned that it just wasn't for me. I also think it was doomed to fail as soon as it was set up. And I feel bad because SBK probably worth $1 billion if it stays in business. We had morphed from this Vanilla Ice, Wilson Phillip, Ninja Turtles era into Blur, Jesus Jones. We had just done the deal with Creation Records, which was adorable, Slow Dive, and Oasis. We had all these we had John Cicada. We were really evolving into a very cool company. And the personality of the team reflected that. It was very sort of alternative rock it was becoming, especially with Blur and Jesus Jones, and then the Creation Records deal. So I think that got lost. And I learned a lot of what not to do. I think that is the greatest talent. Everybody I've interviewed, from Clive Davis to Chris Blackwell to Mo Austin to my dear late friend Jerry Moss and Chris Wright, I would say those are the people I turn to more than any, have taught me what not to do. And that was exactly how not to run a company. But it was a tough time for me, I have to say. And I was sad when I left. But again, it's steps along the way. There never would be a Glassnote if I didn't have that experience, because it taught me what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do.
It's a perfect segue to our next question for you, Daniel. Sticking with that independent spirit, before founding Glassnote, you helped build two independent startups, Rising Tide with Doug Morris and Artemis with Danny Goldberg. Looking back, what did those experiences teach you about the art and challenge of launching an independent label, both creatively and operationally? And how did they shape the vision that you ultimately brought to Glassnote?
Nothing changed. It reinforced. That's all it did. I thought the Rising Tide vision was excellent. Edgar Bronfman Jr. Reached out to Doug Morris. Doug reached out to me and says, let's do this. You're a great independent executive. Let's do this. And we put executives like Steve Leeds, Monty Littman, Ken Levitan, all together, and we were on our way. Did it have to become universal? I'm not sure, but I thought that was a great idea, and I loved the fun of building that, from getting the logo and putting that all on the map. We ramped up rather quickly there, and then it became big. It became big very, very, very fast, and it's a lot of those people are still there. Monty and Avery have done an exceptional A+ job of growing it from homegrown artists, distribution deals, entrepreneurial deals, joint ventures. They've done a really, really great job there from what started as Rising Tide. The end of Rising Tide was the beginning of Cash Money and labels like that before I left. And then, Artemis, I promised my dear friend, who I'm still dear friends with, Danny Goldberg, I would come in for a few weeks to help him, because he had just gotten the funding from Michael Chambers. I wound up staying 7 years, but it got lost along the way because hedge fund type of money came in and things like that. And we were no longer under the arts, under the culture of I always tell people, before you consider a job, trickle upstream like a trout to look at the leader of your cultural company. It's why I always get along with Bob Pittman, because at heart, he's a DJ. He's a radio personality, and that's what he loves more than anything. He's also a very powerful, visionary, rich guy. So, but he's a broadcaster. I love that. I would tell my children, I tell interns or people that come to me about when they're looking at a new enterprise, always trickle up, because if it's not, probably going to be a bad ending for you and for them. So I think Artemis wound up in the hands of people that were not music people. And that's a dangerous thing, who could empathize and understand the patience of what it's like, the cycle of an artist, which is not always predictable. You can't put that into a financial PowerPoint. So, but we did great things. And the education under Doug taught me a lot, to what to do, what not to do. The education with Danny was great, because I did not have exposure in my career to the Warren Zevons, the Ricky Lee Joneses of the world, the Jackson Browns, who I got to meet through Danny. And they gave me the final taste bud refinements I needed to open my own company. At 48, I was ready. That's what happened. And it took me a long time. And some people are ready when they're 19. I wasn't ready. So I learned about quality and about the best songwriters, which I met, and the collaborations we had. We had Bob Dylan, we had Bruce Springsteen, we had Eric Clapton, we had Peter Wolf. So I got to meet these characters. We had Chuck D, all these great, great people coming through the hallways. And also, you know, Danny was very politically oriented, which I loved, the discussions every morning. And that helped me in my daily, tasks of knowing he cared about people, in the world from a political standpoint and a giving back standpoint. So
he just wrote a new book. I don't know if you've gotten it yet, about California politics, I believe. It just
I'll be at the book signing next Thursday.
Oh, good. Okay.
So
good.
We stay in close touch. But I think his original vision was great. But again, it had its time. You know, I look back on it, the fondness, not really of the hit records, but it was spending time with Danny, but also meeting those legendary artists. I just busted Ricky Lee Jones, by the way. We did a mitzvah. We put out Jesse Malin's double album to help him raise some money for his medical care, which I'm very proud of. I've been involved with Jesse's career for many, many years. I love him. He's an icon of the New York scene. And when Jesse did a concert, and it was the first time I think he stood in public since his medical treatment, I go up to see him, and every dressing room was a legend. And I get up to this one dressing room at the Beacon Theater. Who's in there? Russ Titleman, who I know very well. And who's he with? Ricky Lee Jones. And I was with a dear friend. I said to her, before I even said hello to her, I said, "Why did you treat me that way? Why were you so obnoxious to me?" And she starts laughing. She said, "Who are you?" And I told her, she said, "Oh God, I remember what I did to you." It was something about, I had to take her to KCRW, and she was so ornery and so difficult. But I got to meet Ricky Lee Jones, this genius. So, and we started to kibitz after that and laugh and hug. But I just saw her a few months ago. And it was a fond memory, and I have my Warren Zevon disc, near my desk. And man, how lucky was I to, hang out with him.
Hey, insiders. We hope that you've been enjoying our featured conversation. Stay tuned because we've got so much value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey there, insiders. Are you dreaming of making it big as a musician, artist, or industry pro? Well, at MUBUTV, we offer personalized coaching to help you turn that dream into reality.
Think of us as your personal guides, helping you polish your songs, craft your story, find your fans, and grow your social media like a pro.
No matter where you are in your journey, we've got the tools and strategies to take you higher. From live gigs to branding and marketing, our coaching is all about you.
Choose what fits your budget, from single sessions to value-packed bundles.
Start with a free 15-minute discovery call today at book.mubutv.com. Your music career is waiting. Remember why you started making music? That feeling of passion, hope, and longing, wanting someone to hear your story?
But chasing success can be confusing. Who do you reach out to? When? How do you avoid mistakes that could close doors?
At MUBUTV, we believe every artist deserves a clear path forward. That's why we've created 3 free guides that cover the essential skills every musician needs.
How to contact A&R executives with confidence. How to attract an artist manager who gets you. How to pitch your music for film and television placements.
These aren't just tips. They're blueprints designed for artists who want more than just dreams. They want results.
If you're listening right now on this podcast or watching on YouTube, look in the description below. Download these free guides that will change how you approach your music career forever.
Don't wait. Your future fans are waiting.
Hi, this is David Wilcox. Are you an insider? I am. Subscribe now.
Yeah, it was after this period when you made the decision to form Glassnote. What was the inspiration for an independent label at that particular time? Because it was an interesting time in the business. It was 2007, I believe, that you formed Glassnote. Can you talk about that?
So here I am wandering. I'm executive producing some records, which, by the way, turned out to be pretty good. I don't talk about it much because I want to give other people the credit, but I did find some songs for some platinum records, and it was a good period. But I got a call from a headhunter connecting me to a new job. My wife flips out. We're not doing that again. You're not going inside. No way, no way. And she I've never heard her like that. She said, let's go to the bank and let's use our own money and let's start what you've wanted to do for 20 years. I said, okay. So we bought 2 laptops. I called Chris Scully, who I met through Danny at Artemis. I said, Chris, I didn't know this was one of the worst periods of recession about to happen in the American economy. I didn't know. Who could tell 2007, 2008 was going to be a disaster? So I called Chris, and he didn't wink. He didn't bat. He just said, I'm in. I said, Chris, I don't even know what I could pay you, but we're going to start. I said, I got you a laptop. I got you an Apple. My wife got you a laptop, and we started. So I think the mistakes that people make building big offices, building the field and the teams before they have any music is a mistake. We had nothing. We had the 2 laptops and we had ourselves. So that we had no burdens. We had no obligations. We had nothing, no meetings. So all we did was listen to music. And we never discussed an office. All I knew is I want to be near where A&M and Chrysalis was, which was 57th to 60th in Madison. So all I cared about is returning to where my favorite times of Herb and Jerry and where Chris Wright was. So that was a dream if we could make some money. So the 2 of us would meet every morning at the Waldorf Astoria on the mezzanine in the lobby, and that was our office. There was a round cushion that we would sit on, and we'd interview people. We would commiserate. We would collaborate on plans. And then the famous email comes in from a manager named Chris Maltese, and it's that the #1 record on MySpace was by a guy named Secondhand Serenade. It was an emo smash, and inviting us to a show at the bitter end. So I thought it was to me personally. My ego said that. It wasn't to me. I was one of 50 people probably on the BCC. And we went. So we went there. I called my son, Sean. I said, Sean, I need people. I said, I want this to be a scene out of The Godfather. I need you to bring kids. I said, I only have this one intern. He was a nice young man. I said, I need like 6 kids. Bring the kids, and we're going to be a team. We're going to come to the bitter end tonight because I think this record is going to be a big hit. So we showed up 7 of us, Chris, myself, and Sean, and 4 kids, whatever. Strangely, we were the only people to stay till the end of the show and say hi to the artist. He had been flown in by major labels, and they all left, which I thought was really rude. And we stayed. And the next day, the manager said to me very arrogantly, you're a very nice guy, but you don't really have a company. And I said, well, we do have a company, but, let me know how you do with the majors. So all the majors, by the way, mess up. They missed their lunch. They missed the meeting. They disrespected him. So Chris calls me back. Chris Maltese says, "Are you still interested?" I said, yes. I flew out to San Francisco to Silicon Valley, where John Vesely lived. Met his wife. I met his baby. It was completely out of a Jerry Maguire movie. We had each other. I said, I need you. You need me. Put the baby next to me. I helped change the kids' diapers. John was, I think, maybe 19, having a baby. The rest is history. I come back to New York, and we go to the Waldorf the next day, and the security guard throws us out. He thought we were running a prostitution ring or something else, maybe worse. We got thrown out, so we took up an office at Fred's restaurant at Barney's after that. So that's how we started. That's how it started. And Secondhand Serenade sold millions of copies, the single, and we were off and running. The one thing Clive said to me was, it helps to have a hit in the beginning. And we did. Our first release was a double platinum record, and now probably 3-4 times platinum. And then we signed Justin Ozuka, who had a gold record, and the rest was history. And we did that. So that's how we did it.
Daniel, Glassnote's roster from Phoenix and Mumford Sons to Childish Gambino and Chvrches feels united, not by genre, but by a certain spirit and sensibility. And I'm curious, in your view, what truly defines a Glassnote artist? Is it a sound, an attitude, or something more ineffable that you recognize when you encounter it?
Well, you just made a Freudian slip, which I really like. That's how the name of it. You just said Glassnote.
Oh,
which by the way was my pad. I had a picture of Gorbachev on my desk, and it said
nice.
glass notes, meaning
Wow.
glass notes,
Right.
and the whole thing of perestroika and of openness that he promoted. It's funny you said that. I like your slip there. But going back to, I'm sorry.
It was totally planned. It was totally planned.
Well, they all were great live. You know, my first time seeing Chvrches in a club, tiny little club in Camden, London, was unbelievable. My first time seeing Mumford and Sons, I pinched myself. I just didn't believe they were opening for the Temper Trap, one of our artists, at the Mercury Lounge in New York. And I said, so I flew to London the next day to see them at the Roundhouse. They were even better. My first time before I met Phoenix, I had seen them once, and they were the coolest band. I didn't think they were very commercial. I thought they were just cool until I heard Listomania and 1901, but they had a certain sensibility. Childish Gambino, on the urging of my son, Sean, I went to see him. I met him, I hung out with him, but then I went to see him at the Bowery, and he did a 45-minute set of comedy and a 45-minute set of hip hop. And I was like, whoa. And he said, can I come to the office tomorrow? I said, of course you can. They all had something left of center. All had this underdog, weird, eclectic. They were just arty. They had a vibe about them. It wasn't about hit singles. It's about they were original. They were so original, authentic. They just projected something fresh. And I love the fact that one was from Scotland, one was from Versailles, one was from America, and different places. But I just feel they had a magical sensibility about their live vibe. And I put Temper Trap in that book. I mean, the first time I saw Daughter was in a rehearsal studio, and they were like, wow, how could this beautiful woman, this guy Igor and this guy Remy, be producing such sad music when you're such lovely people? And it was, we made the deal. We shook hands right away and made a deal. It's just that you have to have the vision that when you're looking at something so far left, that you can help bring it to the center by exposing it slowly, patiently, with authenticity and care. And I saw that in all of them. And that's the perfect way to do it. That's the way to do it. And then I didn't know we were going to become cool. I didn't set the label up to be cool, but we became, Pitchfork, Rolling Stone started to write about us. We were a cool label. We had all this very important music. So that was not by design. It was, but I tell you one more thing that happened. The family aspect of it, due to festivals and due to the camaraderie of the company, it became a family. So firstly, there's my wife and 3 kids being at every event, every festival, every show, and everybody's used to that. The next thing that happened is the relationship of the artists, the Temper Trap, letting Mumford & Sons tour with them. The Phoenix not only toured with Two Door Cinema Club, but they shared the drummer, because when the great drummer of Phoenix, who to me, Thomas Hedlund, one of my top, I put him up there with Keith Moon and Buddy Rich. I think he's one of the greatest drummers I've ever heard. One of his parents died, and the drummer from Two Door Cinema Club filled in beautifully. Different vibe, but it was great. So we became an artist on to tour together. It was one night in Chicago. We had 4 artists playing one bill. I went my first time in Reading. 4 of the top 5 headliners were Glassnote artists. The only thing ours, which I wish was ours, was LCD Sound System on that bill. And that really is something that I am working on now in the Glassnote 2.0 of this new generation of artists that are coming and working together. We have a record coming out in a few weeks in November, which will be our new band Tours, who are from Devon, England, brand new band, who's doing quite well, featuring Jade Bird, another Glassnote artist. We're doing things like that. So it's we have a lot of writing sessions now between our artists that are going on, and I love that. And we had Silvana Estrada. The only 3 things she's done collaboratively that I know of were, her first one was with Aurora, ours. Second was Chvrches. Third was with Leve, who's not ours, but also a really amazing artist. So I think we're seeing more of that happen again now with the Glassnote 2.0 artist roster. which I hope happens more and more. But you can't force that. That was never a design. But I think they had a left of center feel. I saw a vision. They could be huge. They could be on the main stage of, Coachella, Lollapalooza, Reading, Leeds, festivals like that. That's what I saw.
Daniel, I want to ask you about something that you've said in the past. You've talked about it's about the song. It's about the song. And, what does that really mean? And how do you recognize when a song has it?
It makes you feel something. Either people, you're in the room, it's goosebumps, it's crying, it's laughing, it's politically active, it's a memorable romantic moment, it's graphic, it could be metaphoric like Paul Simon, but I think we're in a business now where everybody thinks of these shortcuts, spend money on digital marketing, hire these influencers, you stimulate this through these things. It's about the songs. And that is the foundation. A great song becomes a great demo, which becomes a great record. Almost every producer I've met of respect, and I've met them mostly all, says we can only make great records when the song is great and the demo is great. And that's what they do. They come in and harness it. And I think we are not listening enough to the great songs. And when I look at what rises to the top in the last 5 to 7 years, and I look what Billie Eilish has accomplished with Phineas. Wow, those are great songs. I look at SZA's album, which I've not been able to take off for 4 years. Morgan Wallen. I look at the Lola Young's "Messy." What a song! I mean, that she's in pain, and speaking to her audience with melody and 4 hooks. Gracie Abrams, her collaboration with Aaron Dessner, unbelievable songs. So I think the songs, they rise to the top. Kendrick's, song last year, some of Drake's things are terrific. I think that the world is about to discover Sylvana Estrada's album, which is songs, working very hard in the studio right now, but it's about songs. I don't think there's a way around it. I think when you look back at the Monday morning quarterback of what happened this weekend, and you look back, it's the songs. It's the songs. You could have it all you want. You could announce the show. You could be on, any kind of television. It's the songs. And that's what people remember. And if there's any weakness besides the lack of mentoring today, it is about us overestimating, us overhyping what a great, memorable, long-lasting song is. Our publishing is with 2 great people, and there's a big team there, but I know Carrie Ann Marshall and Guy Moot very well, and they administer our publishing. And the reason I like them is they're song people. I send Guy a song, he listens to it. That's who he is. He's the same guy I met at SBK when I was a puppy. And that's why he's a great publisher. So it's the songs. It's the songs. And, it's the ones that we allow and we accommodate and indulge the artists. And I'm guilty of this. It's the songs. We worked really hard. There's an artist you're going to hear about named Talia Ray. She's a UK artist from East London. The songs, and they finally got there because the songs were good her first year and a half. Now they're great. You could feel her journey. You feel her path. And now she's going to have big hits. And she learned from David Gray. She learned from Benjamin Francis Leftwich. She's learning from some of the great songwriters out there. But she's 21, and wow, does she have a future.
Amazing. Daniel, having experienced both the major label systems and the independent model firsthand, what do you think each side fundamentally misunderstands about the other, and what lessons could majors learn from independents and vice versa?
Well, I think what I said, I was pretty outspoken when I transitioned from my Chrysalis SBK days into the Glassnote days. And I said to my peers, get the chip off your shoulder. Stop acting like you're persecuted. You can't get to anybody. So one of the first things that we did at Glassnote, going back to 2008, is we had a bad situation with access. And it was really before the protests against the DSPs, because I actually was very friendly with Sean Fanning and Sean Parker and early days Daniel Ek. So I didn't find them to be at all the enemy as the major labels did. I embraced them, major labels didn't. That's a difference of independence. and that. But going back to access, so we put together a consortium of people, Tom Silverman, who was a great independent leader, and a few others. We went to Washington, D.C. to meet the FCC. And we went to Capitol Hill to tell them we were being prejudiced against. Our artists were not being heard. We didn't have access to the radio stations. And local artists, which is what it's all about, if you know the FCC, of what they're supposed to do. It's about local broadcasting and giving licenses to people to support local news, local art, local culture. And I think that's what hit them. That's what hit the vein when they heard that they were hurting local music. We won. All of a sudden, CBS Radio let us in, which then the other chains let us in. So I think I helped inspire our little independent community from feeling so bad for themselves and doing something. And then, of course, the organizations of A2IM and Merlin and all these great organizations came in to represent and defend. So I think one thing is get the chip off your shoulder, number one, get the arrogance and cockiness off there, and act like you belong. Act like you belong at the table and you deserve as much or more. That's happened, by the way. I don't believe that the tables are not equal and the terms are not equal. I think independents have great access and great support where we have to go there. And I think the mistake is being made at major labels right now is that they are not understanding the patience of what it's like. Let's take bands. Bands are tough, whether you're 3 people or 12 people in a band. It's a lot of money to tour a band. It's a lot of money to tour support, a lot of money to talk to people, meet with people, backstages, recording. And then there's the nuance of when a band records, are they good enough for drums, guitar, vocals, and background vocals, or should we use studio musicians? So you notice the trend of major labels last 5 to 10 years is let's sign solo artists and let them put a band around themselves. And very few bands breaking at major labels, independents doing a better job understanding the culture of what it takes to be a band from a garage all the way to an arena. And we've been able to translate that and break those bands. I think also we're less compartmentalized in independent. If you're an intern or you're a senior vice president of an independent label, you're exposed to everything, as opposed to being in a department at a major label, which I think is a little confining and sort of demoralizing and depressing, where you're in promotion or in marketing or in A&R or in business affairs, in accounting. I like when everything is you're together, all of you, for one common cause. Let's break artists together. It's a little bit more of market share, profitability, or competition amongst those. So I think the positives of major labels is the global aspect of having buttons, levers, and pulleys and switches. They do have. They have them. They're able to turn those on. Do they do it enough? Probably not. I think that good managers have learned to game the system of getting cash out of major labels. They're smart enough to know, the big managers, that it's an ATM. They're really not going to get the culture. They're going to get money. And they use it. They make the visuals. They make the assets. They hire their own social media people. And they use it for recording and tour support their own creative way. But, I'm looking at the new Atlantic culture. Seems to be very vibrant and exciting and young. That seems to be hot on the street. I think the Pete Edge's A&R at a major label he's amazing. What Monty and Avery have done at Republic is great. And you've got entrepreneurs under them, especially in the country world now, doing well from the independent standpoint, allowing them to do what they have to do. And John Janik is doing the same thing over at Interscope in a great, great way. I think Warner Brothers is the most old-fashioned company and doing quite well with real A&R and staying with pop and rock and country music in a very, very strong way. So, that's probably the most throwback to the old way of doing things, of, making records and nurturing the artists more than, joint ventures and things like that. But I do think independence of flexibility, autonomy, able to pivot more. It's just the economics are tough when you're signing bands.
That's what I was gonna ask you here about. What are the unique challenges that independent labels face today that perhaps weren't present when you founded Glassnote?
I think it's the tangible payment method of iTunes Store, CDs, and albums, which were really the most important part of our income. We could see it more. It's a little scary to rely on the virality or the impact of what social media can do to your records or what an artist has to do to support themselves. So I think that's different. But the economic model is the fruits of your labor come later. And it's not as easy to recoup early. So you have to stay with it. So my advice to independent entrepreneurs starting out is sign less and stay with things longer. I think it's important to, when you're committing to something, not sign 10 of them, sign one. I think the majors have to do the opposite. I would tell them to sign more because they're in a different game of gambling and percentages. They're playing a different game of market share. But I think we have to sign less. Our taste buds have to be refined and stay in a lane that you really know, because you can have really big hits out of Americana or jazz or folk. You could really, really do well. So I think the economic model is to get the things you need from your distributor, whether they be, a major label independent setup, or you go to a true independent services company. But I think you're seeing so many choices. That's another thing for an independent. You have so many choices. What I don't think is possible is really breaking an artist, truly breaking an artist on your own because you've gotten it viral on TikTok and you've got a big SoundCloud moment. I don't think you're going to have a career out of that. I still think you need a team of people, whether it's your own team of management or a team of experts at a distribution company. And there's many, many, many of those, but you have to have a team to do it with some experience. Experience is very underrated, and relationships are very underrated today.
Daniel, you've often said that Glassnote attracts artists with shared values. And when you meet a new artist, what signals tell you that this artist or band isn't just talented, but aligned with the spirit and philosophy of Glassnote?
I think they have to want to be big. When you look at a Bob Dylan, he wants to play more shows. He wants more people to hear his music. He can't, Springsteen, he works harder now. Paul McCartney, I'm very good friends with Scott Roger. And he gives me, where are you, Scott? And obviously he's got Shania and John Baptiste and, Andrea Bocelli. But Paul, just listening to Paul's itinerary of records and books and movies and TV and remixes and shows and remastering and remixing. So I want to feel that ambition. I want to feel the hustle. I want to feel that. I think that's a value that I really need to feel in that meeting, that they really, really want it. And because, it's all lovely in the courtship, it's all lovely in the dating, but what's it going to be like on the street? What's it going to be like after we put these records out? You need to know they're going to be there, working hard, backstage, networking, doing their thing, posting, whatever they need to do. So it's, I also love, there's a certain, I don't know, je ne sais quoi about artists we attract that have a culture. When Silvana gave us her story, she came to the office, talked about her parents. Her parents own an atelier outside of Mexico City where they actually create and manufacture these instruments, the quattro, like mandolins, violins, guitars. And she comes from a family of creators, of artisans. And I could put that thread into Mumford Sons. If you know anything about their families, incredible family backgrounds. I've gotten to know all their parents and siblings. I've gotten to know the Phoenix people that way. I loved when I first met Lauren Mayberry from Chvrches, her journalistic background and people like that. I think the ones you meet that don't have that, you kind of hype yourselves into something that are doing that. And the first time I met Talia Ray, I don't know, I felt a very soulful, she was 19, much, much older person than I met. And, there was pain, there was pathos, there was really a feeling of I want people to hear my journey. I think I'm attracted to that. And then we have there's such nice people. I'm just trying to think of the experiences that we had with, Hamilton Lighthouser is a guy that I didn't know at all through the Walkman. I met him through Michael McDonald and Jonathan Ishak. But then what he created with Rostam was magic. And I've gotten to know him and his wife and his kids. And, I can't see enough Hamilton shows. So it's, I think family is important, knowing where they come from, that they want to be part of a family, and they want to be big. And again, big is I don't want to say it in a hypey way, but they want to play for more people than not. I heard about what happened last night in Madrid in this square where, I think about 20,000 people showed up to see Silvana. They were expecting 3,000 or 4,000 people. And it was unbelievable. And she, instead of being shocked or, she used it for the adrenaline of what's next. Now we got to do more. And I think it's why Mumford Sons is so big, is that they really love bringing artists that they've discovered with them, the inclusion of it, and making sure everybody has a great time. Every show is joy. Every show is a journey with them. And now they've got, 70 songs of repertoire that they can sing, which they didn't have when we first got together.
Listening to you, I want to explore something that you just said because it's a fascinating aspect. I just flashed on, you talked about being a runner and developing an artist's career, and you've spoken about many in this conversation. It requires stamina, resilience, and a belief that the payoff will come in its own time. It's not unlike running a marathon, I would imagine. And I guess, how do you personally experience that parallel? Is it about patience and persistence, or is it about a deeper kind of faith in the journey itself?
Personally, I've never picked up a book unless it's just awful in the beginning and you just put it down, not to read it front to back. I never watched a movie that I can remember that I enjoyed that I didn't watch the closing credits. So I think with a marathon mentality is the stupidest question you could ever ask me, and people ask me all the time, did you finish? It's like insulting and stupid. It says something about them, not me. Of course I finished. Listen, if I'm incapacitated, God forbid, I won't finish. But that's never happened, never will happen. So it is a marathon. It is a marathon. And I think the parallels are, don't start too fast, meaning don't burn yourself out on the bridge, the first, mile or two. Go with a goal, steady. And then when you need to burst, you burst. When you need to put more money in or more coal in or do larger things, take risks. Taking a risk in a marathon is skipping the water station or jutting in and jutting out or finishing big, things like that. So I think a marathon is a great life lesson for finishing. You gotta finish. And we have a lot of people that start in life and quit. And they quit marriage, they quit school, they quit movies, they quit books. And I think that's a loser mentality. And sometimes you finish the meal or you finish the school course and you say to yourself, that was ridiculous. That was a waste of time. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Not everything is great. Sometimes you have to stay with it to have a good result. And I think if you extrapolate that to your life, it will help you because you'll be a leader that gets things done, that will see things through. And I think that's a great trait. I think politically, we're in the middle of a country that has 90 plates in the air. Lawsuits, wars, tariffs, all that. No one could possibly manage all of that. It's got to see something through because some of it makes a lot of sense, but you got to do it nicely. You got to do it authentically. You got to do it with compassion and empathy. You do that, you do a good job. Same thing with artist development is, are we really here for the goal to get you to that big stage or the gold record, whatever the quantification goal is of it. But I think the marathon is a very, very good life lesson to, it's a training because you have to train. You just can't, with a marathon, you just can't put a pair of sneakers on and run. You've got to train and be ready. So I think that is part of the analogous situation for the music industry of why people quit so much and go on to the distractions of it. So, staying with it is good. And it's a low tech thing, a marathon. The only tech you have is a watch and maybe headphones. And I eschew both of those. I wouldn't use either. I want to enjoy it.
Daniel, you once described yourself as a busboy. someone whose role is to serve others. Do you see service as the highest expression of leadership?
I do. I think that, getting, wrapping a mic or schlepping an amp or getting someone a drink or getting them the spaghetti and meatballs when they want to have them in the studio is the highest form of service, because I can't sing. I can't play that guitar, but they can. I'm so lucky to be there. I want to service them. I want them to feel good about it. So, I love the meal with the artist. I love the hang with the artist. I love to make them, feel good about themselves and expose them a little bit of my world, taking them to one of my Yankee games and one of my Knick games. I love doing that with artists. I've taken artists to synagogue with me, whether they're Jewish or not. And I think that's really part of our culture at Glassnote to see things like that. So I do.
Daniel, every great artist, they go through moments of doubt and crisis. And as someone who has guided artists through those storms, which you have throughout your career, what have you found truly helps them reconnect with their sense of purpose?
The truth. The truth. I think that there's not enough honest conversations. We all try and placate, accommodate, indulge, baby. And you got to be nice, but not enough people tell the truth. And managers have a fear of being fired. They do not want that membrane broken, and they'll go around it. There are things that are just not good. There are things that you shouldn't do. There's money that's just not available. I think telling the truth is the best. I told an artist recently, please use studio musicians. Okay? Your band is terrific, but they're not a recording band. You got to tell the truth. Or why was that record 2 minutes and 8 seconds? You missed the bridge and the hook. Why did you stop in the middle of a song? Why did you do that? What did you really, really, really want to say? Tell the truth. And I think it's a reset. And by the way, it's a valuation of your relationship. I have a very, very good long marriage. And I think if you're not checking that every single day and night, you're not going to have a great marriage. So it's part of that. You take stock moment by moment, because it gets better when you tell the truth. And you find out what the other side needs, and then you say, we can afford it. We don't want to do it. It's illegal. It's immoral. But all the things that go under decision-making in life. But when you're dealing with an artist, the truth is so much better. Say it. Stop being afraid to tell the truth. No one's waiting for that person's record. And that's a hard thing for someone to understand, the release date. It may have to be moved. It may not be ready. And the mistakes we make is and I said it before, we accommodate and we indulge. And I think experienced people are right more than they're wrong. But you have to communicate it sensitively, empathetically, and do that right. So maybe my talent is I communicate better now than I did maybe when I was 25, because then I would scream and, really tell the truth and just say, bluntly. Now you have to say it a little differently, but I'm saying the same thing. And I look back at my again, as I said before, my flops. Maybe I didn't say the truth enough or emphatically enough.
Daniel, there seems to be an ongoing theme throughout our conversation. And I'm curious, you've said that after everything, fame, charts, deals, it all comes down to family, health, and the song. How long did it take you to really know that on a cellular level?
Everything I've done in my life has been family. So from the time I worked for a family in the Catskill Mountains, love that job. As a busboy, short order cook, whatever I was there, to my uncle's luncheonette, to my, marrying my boss's daughter when I worked at Sam Records for Sam Weiss, family. Chrysalis was a family. My wife and I are dear friends with Chris Wright and his wife, the head of Chrysalis. I mean, we vacation together. And, if Jerry Moss hadn't passed away, he was also a very, very dear friend. And A&M was a family. And the great labels, they were families. Island and Virgin and Sire and places like that. So Def Jam, Motown, those great labels. So I think, health is key. And I think that's part of fighting for things in the music industry. I'm proud to be on the board of, a few very important organizations. And I've been honored. We've given generously because we do great things, fighting for cures and research and helping people. through addiction and cancer and things like that. You said family, you said health, and you said songs. And then the third thing is to fight for is the song and the quality. And I think when we lose sight of that, we're off. We're just going to be off. And you could do all the post, as I said, the analysis you want, but it comes back to the song.
Daniel, throughout your life, and we know that you are a voracious reader, and we've touched upon that in this conversation. What books or films or documentaries have you found to be particularly inspirational that you could recommend to our audience?
Wow, I read a lot. Wow, I just read Trust. I just read, two books that got me through the pandemic. It's interesting. I think about it because I just came back from Paris. I saw David Hockney's lifetime retrospective at the Louis Vuitton Foundation. But I read Spring Cannot Be Canceled by David Hockney, with co-written by an art critic, and it made me cry. That spring it was just so, I needed it during the pandemic, that book. And I have a new appreciation for David Hockney. And I would say Splendor in the Vial was an incredible book for me to read because I really got into what happened with Churchill in World War II and the seeds of what happened in Germany and things like that. I think those are two books I've read. Trust. I read a book called Audition recently. I'm not sure if this is going to help anybody. I read a lot of books, and I talk about books all the time. I'm reading Yellowface right now, which is amazing. It's about social media and being canceled, and about book publishing and taking on appropriation of white and Asian identities. But I just recommended, there's a young man that moved to New York recently, and he's going to do great. He graduated from Syracuse, and I have a lot of faith in this young man. And he said, "What should I read?" I said, "You should pick up Moss Hart's great book, I think it's called Act One, and you should pick up Herman Wouk, Young Blood Hawk." I said, "If you want to read about what it's like to leave a place and come to a place to conquer, how hard it is to conquer a New York City, read those two. It may not be for the field you're going into, but I think they're both timeless about making it in a big city like New York City." So Young Blood Hawk and Act One are two books that I think are really good. Act One is a great book about show business. I would say to people, read those to get the story of it. And I think those are terrific books that I recommend. I read a lot. It's a tough question because I have so many books I could recommend.
Well, those are great, and we'll definitely
Trust is a great book I recently read, and it was recommended by my friend Shane Carter in Canada, that book, and he was right. I missed it. I don't know how I missed that book, but that was a beautiful book. And and then what's sad, sometimes you read a great book like Hamnet, and I hear the early reviews of the movie are terrible. So I'm probably not going to see it because I love that book. That was another pandemic book about Shakespeare's son that I loved.
Great. All great choices that we'll definitely share in our show notes. I wanted to ask you, Daniel, if your life in music has been one long conversation between faith, art, and endurance, what advice, wisdom, or inspiration can you offer artists and other future industry professionals who are committed to building careers for themselves in music?
I'd say two things immediately come to mind. One is to learn your past. Interview, hang out, be a busboy for some of the people that you've looked up to or heard great things about. I don't know the facts of this, but I understand that Scooter Braun and, really wanted to learn about David Geffen. He was, I don't know if I say idolized him, but, it's someone that he aspired to become, and he got to know him. I would say before I opened Glassnote, I had 6 really thoughtful meetings with Chris Blackwell. He invited me to his apartment on more than one occasion. He made me breakfast. He put the jelly on. By the way, everything was his. It was his rum, his jelly. Everything was his products. And he was fantastic. Chris Wright has been so generous to me with advice. Jerry Moss, every time I went to LA, I would try and see him at his convenience. So do it at their convenience. If you have to drive somebody, walk with somebody in the park, pick somebody up somewhere, give them a lift, hop in the car with them. Just sit next to them on a plane if you can. I think you learn about the past, learn from great ones, but you have to discern about the great ones. And you got to show up. You have to show up. You must go to the show. You must be there for the birthday. You must be there for the sad moments and show up for people. And you got to work hard. You got to work hard. I think the overestimation of hard work in this generation is so distorted and warped. People feel bad for themselves. I don't think they have any inkling or understanding what it's like to go the extra mile and really, really work hard at the 25th hour. That, I think, is something that they are not willing to do. And if they are, they're going to go all the way. So it's really, really introspectively saying, do I want this? And we haven't made the atmosphere and the environment that conducive to having fun or being mentored or nurtured, because we don't have the track record now of the ascension of the ladder where we're rewarding people enough. But if we can start doing that, but I would say learn at the feet of the great ones, pick up those crumbs, gather the crumbs off the table, show up, and work harder than you've ever worked before. And when you think you're working harder, work harder. On and on and on and on. You got to work harder because it will pay off. It will pay off. You know, it's the managers who are winning. I talked to John Silver the other day. I mean, he is one of the hardest working guys. He doesn't have to. He travels the world for his artists. He will visit radio. He will visit retail. He'll do anything for his artists. You know, that's why he's John Silver.
We cannot thank you enough for taking the time to share your experience, your life, all of this with us. This has been a fantastic, insightful, and extremely informative and helpful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I didn't prepare a lot for it, but your beginning was terrific about faith. So thank you for stimulating that.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, we did a lot of research before, structuring the interview and, wanted to talk about a lot of various elements with you. So this has been really good. So thank you. Thank you so much for, your time and for indulging us in all of those types of questions as well.
Hopefully we could do one in 2 years and these little babies like Talia Ray and Tours can grow up and be the next big ones, I hope.
Absolutely, without exception.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you. Oh, my God. Eric, I can just say, as somebody who's been in this business for 47 years, this was a conversation.
For the ages.
That, not only for the ages, but it was one that gives you a true and powerful and profound understanding of what real success over a very long period of time is truly about, and gives you a deeper understanding of why someone like Daniel has lasted and continues to thrive in today's music business.
Yeah, it was truly a masterclass.
Unbelievable. Just some of the things that he talked about with regards to talent, with regards to faith, with regards to, leadership, the way that when we started to speak about the comparisons and the metaphor between, a marathon running, which he's done, dozens of marathons in his career, and an artist's career, and how metaphorically they are tied together, in a certain way. And I just think that, it was fascinating, the elements of faith with regards to like faith and instinct in an artist. And what I loved is, one of the things that he talked about that really stood out to me was when he spoke about one of the things that united all of the Glassnote artists. Every single one of them was great live. Right. That they all had that going for them. And that is something that I think is so important today. We lost track of that as an industry. Yeah. Within the business with TikTok coming in, and I'm going back like 5-6 years where people were signing artists that had, songs that blew up, and then only to realize that
there's nothing else behind it.
Nothing behind it. There were no additional songs. There was no live performance. There was nothing
to build on.
To build upon. And how Daniel started from the place of they already have the great live show. Right. And you can tell he signed every one of those acts that we talked about in the show based on being great live.
Yeah, the other parallel I thought, adding on to what you were saying, Rich, was also that the theme throughout the interview was family. about how which is very rare in this business to have somebody
on many levels.
Correct. And
Yeah.
I think that's why he's had such success. The area that I loved, and this is obviously something that we have talked about this a million times, and our great dear late friend Don Grierson, and he reiterated this point, Daniel, which was, it's about the song. How do you recognize when a song has it? And he says, it makes you feel something. It's goosebumps, it's crying, it's laughing, politically active, a memorable romantic moment. A great song becomes a great demo, becomes a great record. Almost every producer I've met says we can only make great records when the song is great and the demo is great. How many times have we heard that? Like, you've heard that with several things that you did at Arista with some of the artists you've worked with. And, again, this all, without a great song, you don't have the foundation. I don't care what it is you're doing. If the song is not there, you have nothing.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it is so interesting how, certain acts over the years have been phenomenal live.
Right.
But until they got that aspect that you just spoke of, I think of the early years of the Chili Peppers,
right,
who were a phenomenal live
band,
act, but
didn't have the songs.
Not in those
had
really
great
early
songs,
years.
but not songs that were memorable
that would break them through.
Right.
They were a great performance band and great energy. But that's a perfect example. And when they really got the songs, they already had the other elements of being a great band. It all came together.
Yeah.
Beautifully.
Right.
One of the things that really stuck with me as well was when Daniel also spoke on the non-creative elements of talent. When he spoke to the fact that they have to want to be big.
Right.
The artists have to want to be big. I want to feel that ambition, he said. I want to feel the hustle. He says, I think family is important, knowing where they come from, that they want to be part of a family, and that they want to be big. No one ever has a career by accident.
Right.
And that's a very important, and a lot of times we don't talk about that, that level of drive and ambition. And he wants to be able to see it. And nobody's going to say, like, do you have that?
Exactly.
Do you have
It gets back to, I can't want this more than you want it.
And it gets back to the point that you made at the top of the show when you spoke about when somebody just comes out on stage, that you just feel that.
Correct.
You feel that.
The charisma, the presence,
exactly.
the X factor.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what's most important.
Hey, Insiders. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch Esra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.